Hello and welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. Here to talk about everything that's happened over the weekend. UFC Vegas, Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill in the books. Pretty good card overall. We'll be discussing the main event, a few of the key fights on that card as well. Plus, in the news, Dana White versus Francis Ngannou, the fallout of Ngannou's massive PFL deal and the way Dana White has felt about it. Ngannou's texting war and Twitter war with John Jones. We'll be discussing that. And have you seen Conor McGregor? Most likely, because he's fucking everywhere over social media right now. We'll be discussing that, the fact that he's got two different documentaries basically about to be airing at the same time, is showing up at every single fight and every single combat sport. Sounds like it's finally back in the USADA testing pool. That will be on the discussion panel. And who knows, maybe a couple of other things.
Yeah, is Bellator for sale? Sorry.
Hey, big news there. I'm, of course, host Matt, joined as always by host and producer Josh.
Hello.
We are remote today because Josh is a little bit under the weather, so audio only, but that is not stopping us from discussing what we need to discuss.
Yeah, in all good conscience, I can't put in that 20-minute cold open because, one, you would have long figured out this was audio only, but I don't think I can subject you to a 20-minute conversation about The Wire.
The Wire was a great show.
Yeah, maybe I'll throw it up at the end of the episode if we run out of stuff to say.
We should really save our conversations about TV shows that we both like for weeks where there has been no MMA. I feel like that is the best time for a wired discussion.
Yeah. So next week.
Season is the best. Next week, basically. Tune in next week. This week, though, we have fights to talk about. Before we get into that, like, subscribe, comment, leave your own thoughts and opinions, all of that jazz. We'd love to hear some feedback. And Josh, we're not going to go fight by fight on this one, but let's talk about this main event. It got fight of the night. We'll be discussing whether or not that was merited or if it should have been a performance bonus. But either way, Mackenzie Dern, coming off the back of a couple of losses, went at Angela Hill like she owed her money. I mean, that was about as aggressive as you will see a fight in women's mixed martial arts.
Yeah. As aggressive a performance from Dern. I felt like Hill was, and I do feel like this was fight of the night because it does take two to tango, but more than anything, Hill's ability to survive, stay in the fight, the second round was fucking key to her actually getting through to the end of that fight, I feel. Just having the confidence to know that she can survive in a lot of those bad situations and then have the second round and be like, I can actually have an impact in this fight. If I can stay on my feet, I can fucking make something happen here. But even in a stand-up, it wasn't really that even. Dern was sloppy, aggressive, but Perillo didn't seem to have any issues with the way she was fighting. And I think they just kind of appreciate we don't need to respect Hill's power too much if we can land every time she's landing. If we can go first and last, then it doesn't matter too much what Hill throws in between.
I agree with you on the fight of the night, even though this was a one-sided beatdown. And you could argue this should have been a performance. But there is kind of like when a fight is that one-sided and when you have multiple situations where the fight has been rocked, dropped at one point, is having punches rain down from full mount, is having multiple just on the verge of having a submission locked in and manages to survive, it kind of becomes this sort of morbid curiosity of just like, is this human actually going to survive this? And the fact that she did, like, for everything that Angela Hill went through, I think she deserves an extra 50 grand. I don't have an issue with that.
For sure. And we wouldn't have had such a good fight, right? Obviously, the ideal fight would be a very competitive one. But we wouldn't have seen such a good fight if Hill wasn't tough enough to stay in that fight.
Oh, she didn't quit.
Yeah, and
she had a lot of chances to quit.
There were some good fights on this card.
There was some. It wasn't a bad card. I thought there were some really good performances. Staying on the main event though, just for a second.
Yeah.
The number of times Hill could have, with no shame or disrespect, allowed one of those arm bars to lock in, tap before any damage is done, curl up and just let a few of those shots rain down and let the referee step in. There were multiple points where the race was done and she could have thrown in the towel. And she didn't. She hung in there. She did her best to try and keep fighting. She always stayed in it. She always stayed active. Mackenzie Dern, though, I think she just had that fire in her gut. She's going through a divorce, didn't have Perillo around that much for this camp because he was working with Rockhold for his bare knuckle fight. A lot of adversity to deal with, coming off the back of a couple of hiccups. And, she is sloppy, but I'll say this: there was a lot of weight being put behind her punches, I thought, in the stand up, in a way where I've kind of felt a lot of her striking beforehand was just, I'm going to crash forward and swing to just close distance, then I'm going to do my work. And this felt like she was actually throwing a lot of those punches with bad intentions. She wanted to hurt Angela Hill with those hooks. And she did. And, even though it was a little sloppy, I thought she made some really nice reads, like the knee that she landed in the third round. She'd kind of been throwing that knee up there a little bit, but the way that she timed it perfectly, just as Angela Hill was ducking in, trying to close distance to land a hook, that's a good read. That's a high level read, and it's not an easy shot to land that clean.
Oh no, for sure. Um,
On the ground,
she's
I mean, she's an animal.
she's not going to be able to fight like that against every woman in this division. But the sense I got from the way the game plan seemed to be set out and the way both her and Perillo were in the corner, I don't think they're stupid. Well, Perillo's definitely not, but I don't think she's silly enough to think that she's going to be able to do that to every girl in the division. What I like is that she executed on a game plan really fucking well, even if she didn't get the finish. Like you say, this was a one-sided beatdown.
Yeah, I mean, listen, nobody looks good fighting Angela Hill. Very few people look good fighting Angela Hill, and she beat her pillar to post. I do feel the way this fight played out as well, I think would have been very demoralizing because you lose the first round, almost certainly 10-8. So you're already two points down, basically, after just one round. She wins that second round, but obviously has the slight demoralization of knowing that she hasn't even the score. She's probably just pulled one back. And then has the third round where she gets rocked, almost admitted again. Probably knows in her heart of hearts that's another 10-8 round. So it's like you're 3 rounds in a fight, and all of a sudden you basically you're 3 down instead of 1 down. You can't even win on decision anymore unless you finish her, and it's only the third round, and you won one of those rounds. Like that's a tough mental position to get out of. I think one thing we have to give Dern credit for as well is she didn't slow down. I mean, the aggressiveness she showed, you'd expect there to be a tail off in the amount of energy and the output. And in the fifth round, she was pretty much being just as active. So even though the technique hasn't improved a lot on the feet, she's clearly showing that like the stamina is improving. We saw in like the Yan Xiaonan fight, the Marina Rodriguez fight, she kind of lost steam once it got into sort of rounds 2 and 3. And that didn't happen in this fight. So I think there's been physical improvements, but not technical striking improvements.
No, definitely. One quick thing. Do you think it was a bit not weird, but against the grain that her old man gave her the third stripe on her black belt when she didn't get a finish, when she didn't get a submission? Because I can't remember another time I've seen someone get a belt promotion. When I've seen it happen when someone gets a finish. I can't remember ever seeing after a decision.
I have some theories, but none of them are backed up. I think it's possible she'd already earned the third degree on her belt, and they just didn't want to do the ceremony when she's just in the gym. So they were always just going to, like, she'd already passed that credential, and they were just going to wait until her next fight before they effectively awarded it. I would also say that she had 3 submissions, dude, where the only reason why they weren't completely locked in is because time ran out on the clock. But everything aside from that was just top level. I mean, just top level. And obviously this isn't relating to her black belt, but mixing in the ground striking, the wrestling. Like we've kind of talked about how good she is with the jiu-jitsu, but kind of lacking in some of those other areas related to grappling and clinching. And those did seem to be dramatically improved. Like she was making sure she was doing damage, even at points where she wasn't just looking for the submission on the ground. So I don't know. I think there's clearly been an improvement in her, and certainly, you know, I don't know if the Yan Jianan fight, like obviously the divorce got announced, the separation got announced shortly afterwards. I'd imagine maybe there were some problems going on in that fight. And obviously it's not the easiest time in her life, but she definitely seemed like she was more focused and more mentally switched on than we'd seen previously. She called out Rose. I don't know what's happening with Rose. I don't know if we're really going to see a fight again, to be honest.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I thought it was a respectful call out as well, all things considered. You what as well? These women were training for a 3-round fight.
I didn't think about that.
So another reason I think maybe they should both be getting 100,000.
Yeah. Well, they would have got a bonus for being in the main events, I'm sure. Anyway,
Yeah,
listen, let's not talk about fighter pay. Good main event. It certainly lived up to the billing, even though it was, as you say, a late replacement due to the title switch up that we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks' time for UFC 289. Let's have a look at some of these other nice performances. Big performance from Fluffy Hernandez.
yeah, man. This was
I didn't think Shabazian was looking too bad at certain moments, but it's
no, he
just
started well. I mean,
overly.
honestly, I thought he fucking had Fluffy hurt in that first round. I mean,
Yeah, it's
he didn't, but I was genuinely concerned about my pick right there.
yeah, we kind of needed these as well. It wasn't a great pick for me. Pick to week for me.
Well, we didn't do too bad. It's just that the two that we had separate both went my way.
Yeah, that
And
definitely
we
rubbed
and
it
we
in.
didn't have too many fights on the card, so the losses did kind of sting.
I had a bad run on the prelims. Very bad run on the prelims. I got like 3 or 4 wrong in a row, which I was not happy about. This one I got right. Uh, that's Fluffy Hernandez. When you can grapple and you can strike, you can overload your opponent. And it just became just a work information overload. Shabazian was having to defend so many different things, man. He's defending strikes, he's defending ground attacks, he's defending takedowns. They're not stopping. He's always in your face. He's a tough. He's low key good.
Yeah, and those elbows were fucking nice. Just frankly,
When
I Fluffy had a bit of a mixed bag at the start. He's really fucking putting it together recently, and really seems to be all in on himself as well. And frankly, when you can be that tough, when your stand up can be that good at times, and you've got the ability to like fucking snatch those guillotines, and in the way he sets his guillotine up's pretty fucking nice as well. It really forces guys to remain on their P's and Q's all the way through the scramble. But Fluffy's got so many fucking weapons, and he's really mentally putting it all together. Great team. Just, I don't know where to put the roof on Fluffy right now. Like, I don't know where I
he's cut.
mentally kind of cap him. I need to fucking see him fight some real high level fighters.
Well, this is what I'm kind of thinking. I don't know where I'm like you. I don't really know where the ceiling is. What I do kind of think is that this isn't a bad time to be putting a run together at middleweight because think about the middleweight landscape. You've got Jared Cannonier, who's going to be 37 years old this year. You've got Derek Brunson, who's apparently still fighting. Apparently, he's going to do one more, but he's on the verge of retiring. So that's two guys in the top 15 that might not be in the rankings and, might be moving on in the not too distant future. Alex Pereira's just moved up.
Yeah, Paulo
Darren
Costa's
Till's
an
just dropped
absolute
out.
melt.
Costa's a melt. You've got Gastelum, who's just gone down to confirmed he's going back down to 170.
Yep.
These are all ranked guys. These are all spaces that are opening up. And then you look at some of the matchups and you think, well, the one thing I'd back with Fluffy is that there's a lot of strikers in that kind of top higher echelon of middleweight that might find it difficult to deal with somebody who kind of mixes things up that way. And then you start thinking, even somebody like a Jack Hermanson, Jack Hermanson, I think, might struggle with Fluffy.
I think he would. Also, no spring chicken.
No spring chicken either.
I feel like
So
Fluffy
this
does a
could
lot of
be
what Hermanson does. He's. I haven't seen as much of his submission game, so I can't speak to that in terms of like his versatility for it. But the way he can
he
set up
tapped out
things and
Rodolfo
snatch
Riera, man.
things, yeah, man. I, I just kind of feel like he does everything Hermanson does well, but better. He does it slightly differently. He's not gonna rely on the jab as much as Hermanson does, and I don't know where he's at with snatching leg locks. If he can be as crafty as Hermanson is there, but just generally talking about like the way they can be that submission magician, the way they can surprise people on the feet. Although I feel Fluffy's way more versatile and dangerous. I just feel like Hermanson is almost like a poor man's Fluffy. That's probably the way we're going to be talking about it in 2 or 3 years.
Possibly, possibly. But I just feel I don't know. I think this could be This is a good time to make a run at middleweight because even some of the other kind of prospects, it's like we all thought Andre Muniz looked like the guy, and I kind of feel like he might be a bit of a one-trick pony.
Yep.
Now that we sort of see him sort of move up the rankings a little bit, Paul Gray
Imavov
coming down
slips.
to Imavov, I'm not so sure of anymore. So it's I don't know. This could be like even if he's not elite level, he might just be like that guy that puts a run together at that right point in the division and kind of manages to kind of shoot up and get himself in a picture that maybe you wouldn't have thought of in a different, like he wouldn't get in a different division or at a different time.
Nah, for sure. Point well made. Yeah, the middleweight division's being gutted right now.
We got to touch on Shabazian though. This is a real fall from grace, man. I mean, his only win in the last 5 fights is against Ange Lusa, and it wasn't really a terrific performance. This
No.
was a kid that had so much hype.
You know what? He defended the a lot of the submissions well. He didn't look too bad start of the first round. I'm not going to write him off based on this performance. I think I'm willing to give more credit to Fluffy. But, yeah, at the end of the day, you can't keep losing fucking fights. You need to get a good win. If he doesn't get cut, I hope they give him like a good name again next. And I really like to see what he can do. Because there's no point saying like, oh yeah, get some wins together, fight your way back. At this point, it's like you've been fighting long enough against like top shelf quality. There are moments where I believe maybe you can hang at that level. Like, fucking, like, prove it or fucking move on, I guess. It's not like you're going to make terrible money in the PFL.
No, good point. Let's move down. Good win for Lupi Godinez. We're not going to talk too much on that. That was pretty expected.
Was a good fight, though. Dakota came back well as well. I'm kind of glad that Viana dropped out of this one. I think we've got an upgrade there.
Fair enough. Okay, which knockout did you prefer? Joaquin Buckley's head kicking Fiallo into the Shadow Realm, or Diego Ferreira basically just doing the mirror version of the Josh Emmett knockout on Michael Johnson?
I think the Buckley one, because just the way that Fiallo, when like he was unconscious, was still kind of smiling and like kind of nodding, that Buckley was like, shit, I got to keep hitting this guy. And the ref was like, motherfucker, I already ended the fight. What are you thinking? And none of us, like I think even Felder was like, yeah, bam, one more. Like all of us were just like, yeah, he's conscious. Surely, look, he's smiling. Just a funky knockout. But the Ferreira Johnson one, it's just vintage Johnson. You look great until you shit the bed.
So good.
And it's just that.
Looks so good.
Just a real flash overhand. So well. Just zip, there it is. Like, I didn't think it made the kind of contact that was going to fuck him up that bad, but, it's not how it looks, it's how it lands. And I guess that one landed.
It's literally identical to the Josh Emmett knockout.
Yeah.
It's identical. It's the same shot. Michael Johnson shows the same shot, drops the same left hand in the same way. Fiala comes over with the overhand. Almost, I mean, it's shot for shot. It's fucking insane. It's absolutely insane. And it's like, you think Michael Johnson, Luke Rockhold are two guys that have just in the worst way had like a cataclysmic flaw in their technique, brutally exposed like numerous times. And it's like they can't do anything about it. Like what they're in their 30s. They're not going to unlearn things that they've been doing for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh man, I felt bad for Michael Johnson. I kind of felt bad for Fialo in a different way. It's and not to say I felt bad, but he gets the clash of heads with Buckley. He obviously felt like Buckley was slowing down, or I think he thought that Buckley was starting to flag. So he doesn't want to give Buckley that rest time. And it's not that I think he was rocked, but the head kick lands so quickly after the restart that I just don't think Fialo had kind of like mentally switched him back into like full combat mode, if you see what I mean. Like he'd had the break, a bit annoyed. He's thinking, right, put the pressure on. And he's just in that moment lost a little bit of focus. And that obviously gives Buckley the ability to kind of land the kick the way he does.
Yeah. Still,
But
Buckley
no,
looks good at 170.
I thought he looked a little sloppy, to be honest, man. Very explosive, but I just thought it was a lot of big lunging movements coming in. He got caught with a couple of kicks to the head. He took them well,
Yeah,
but I do kind of look
he
at it
looks
and
good
think,
relative to him, is what I'm saying. He's still Buckley, but I did voice concerns that like I worried about how coming down to 170 if he would still look as athletic. But still moving around fine, taking shots, landing shots. Seems for me, this seems to be the weight class for him.
I'd agree with you. I'd just like to see the distance management a little bit better. There were so many things he was trying to kind of, lunge in from just a little too far out. And I do think that the speed is a bit of a factor. Obviously, middleweights, I think he's somebody that really hasn't. He went from basically not cutting weight to now kind of probably walking around a few pounds shy, but pretty much being the same kind of athlete. But obviously, he's fighting smaller, faster guys. So I think there is going to be that adjustment of like, okay, something that probably I have a huge speed advantage and can get away with at middleweight. I'm going to have to accept I might not have that speed advantage in that weight class. What I am going to have though is my power translating down and the ability to completely shut people out and not just get physically manhandled when I get in the clinch.
Yeah, I
No,
it's not a world beater, but this is a huge success for him moving down. I love it.
He's fun, man. That's the thing. He's a fun. You need people like him in the UFC.
Yeah, and that spinning kick knockout when he caught the leg. That's going to be getting replayed for 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, and also listen, he comes to fight every single time. He'll get amped up. He'll be excited. He's in your face. He's a hard fight, but he's also not a dick. Like, how many guys do you know that can be as loud and brash as him, but are also really nice guys that are respectful after the fight and don't talk that much shit and are really complimentary to their opponents, win or lose after the fight?
Yeah, he's a gent.
Nah, this was a good fight, good card. Both of this. I mean, Diego Ferreira and Buckley delivered. Slava Claus, really nice finish as well.
Yeah, I mean, fucking 3 knockdowns, just great performance from him.
Yeah, it looked really, really nice.
Kovacevic, is she back?
Kovacevic,
Look pretty fucking good.
hey,
Look pretty fucking good.
Demopoulos isn't an easy fight, but she made her look pretty average.
Yep. Oh, talking
Good
about
performance from her.
average, another Kosuke brother shits the bed. Although to be fair, all right, he was getting his ass kicked, but that kick to the liver, pretty nasty at the end.
Agreed. And Gilbert Urbina, I did not think he had it in him to get a UFC win, so fair enough for him. I kind of feel the standout of the prelims, though, has got to be our girl, Natalia De Silva.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, this girl, this is ridiculous at this point.
That wasn't a finish.
Is,
that was mercy.
Yeah, she is murdering people. I mean, literally murdering people. She beat Jasmine Jadovicius in her debut from pillar to post for 15 minutes in every single discipline, styled on her for the last round, basically. against in a second fight. I can't remember the name of the girl she fought, but won it from a spinning heel kick to the neck. Which I know she was aiming for the face, but it landed on the neck, and that's still pretty nasty. And for a fight that lasted about 2 minutes, Victoria Leonardo's face, she looked like she had a jaw broken, dude.
Yeah, I was interested to see how she was going to react after the ref waved it off. If she was going
She
to be
didn't
like,
look
that's
upset.
early, but she looked very, very relieved. She looked very upset because she, obviously knew that she had lost, but it was, I those head kicks at the end were fucking savage. Um, y there's no blocking that. It's like you just, yeah,
And she's so
she was done.
explosive. The technique is so perfect. She makes reads, she counters so quickly. Her distance management is insane. That's 3 fights now. She's barely been hit.
Yeah,
And
fucking
I know that they're not the highest rated girls. I know that we're not talking about ranked fighters. I know that there's loads of there's a bigger disparity between the top and the bottom of the UFC and women's MMA. But it's only the best people that we see tear through the lower competition like this.
yep, absolutely. She needs
Star.
to get a huge, huge bump in the next fight. Uh,
No,
you know what?
she's got it all, man. And she's so sellable, man. I mean, from Brazil, big market, young, pretty, super sweet, exciting style, spinning kicks, dangerous on the ground, finishing fights. He's got everything.
Yeah, love the post-fight speech. Um, One of my favorite fights of the night, Nascimento Latifi.
This was a good fight, man. This was a good fight. I like weirdly. I've gone from hating Latifi to kind of liking him at heavyweight because even though he's really boring, I think making him fight literal giants in comparison to him, it does kind of give you like a root for the underdog kind of thing, where it's just like Jesus Christ, is this little guy actually going to do it?
Well, after the way the fight started, I just couldn't believe the way he managed to come back in the first round. Obviously, must have taken that on one judge's card, and then, um, you know,
Wins round two.
yeah, just stays in this fight, like has a good fight. Um,
It's what he
I
does,
really
man.
fucking enjoyed it. It was a good fight.
It's what he does.
I
He
was a
gave Derek Lewis a hard fight.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit surprised of the split decision. It was a close fight, but yeah, fuck it.
Nascimento won 1 and 3. I
Yeah, that's
thought.
the way I
I
saw
didn't think
it.
that was controversial. But you've got to give credit to Latifi, man. He's going in there against fucking giants, dude. And they are hitting him with bombs. And he is still moving forward. And he is closing that distance. And he is getting clinch in the clinch. And he is doing whatever he can to try his best to win. And it's weirdly entertaining.
Yeah, yeah. I
No,
again,
I
this is
enjoyed it.
one of my favorite fights. I think just behind the main event for me.
I wouldn't have put it as one of my favorites, but I do like where your mind's at.
Yeah, because I enjoyed
And
Hernandez whooping Shabazian. Godinez Ducati was good. There's some good performances in there, but yeah, this was just a fun fight.
Chase Hooper looked pretty fucking good.
Yeah, took some big steps forward. Still needs to continue taking steps forward, but yeah,
Work to be
Chase
done.
Chase Hooper
Work to be done.
had a really good night out against Nick Fury, and that
Also,
was
we didn't
exactly
talk
how to beat
about,
the guy in front of you. So fuck it.
and also we didn't talk about the fact that he's at lightweight now when we did the preview.
Yeah, and filling out a bit, didn't look small.
A good decision. Good decision. Good cards in total. Interesting facts as well. I watched the main card on DAZN because I couldn't find the link, so I had everything in Spanish. And it is interesting. I'm kind of wondering. It does sort of make me wonder, like, how much does listening to the commentary have an effect on how you're viewing the fight?
Sometimes, when it's at its best, sometimes it is great because they'll really help you unlock something you weren't really appreciating before. But yeah, there's lots of times where they're just a little like, not just the fact that they're kind of against what I'm thinking, but I just feel like they're kind of off the pace with like the general consensus. Like they get too zoned in sometimes. It's inevitable. It can be frustrating. I generally keep the commentary quite low.
Yeah. Well, it's not even to say it's just good or bad commentary, but it does just sort of make me wonder, like, what happens when you don't have that like outside input into your opinion. You
Yeah.
know what? Even if it's not good or bad commentary, just the idea of, if you, because obviously I don't know Spanish well enough to sort of understand what their kind of perspective is when I'm listening to it, but it does mean that like when I'm looking at the fight, I'm only taking in my own opinion. I'm not sort of having my opinion then get sort of counterbalanced against what Michael Bisping thinks or Dominic Cruz thinks or John Anik thinks.
No, for sure. Um, I feel like
Dramatic
there are some
pause.
commentators that I have to listen to, but for the most part, they don't really call any fights anymore. Like Brian Stan, for me, was the best, and
So what you're saying is you're a Stan.
yeah, I am a Stan fan. And Joe Rogan, at his peak when he was doing it all the time, phenomenal.
So here's the thing with the commentary: like when you have DC Joe Rogan and John Anik, and something like the Israel Adesanya knockout happens, they make that moment feel more special. Like there's something about the over the top reaction and then
Yeah,
cutting to the commentator cam, and you see Joe Rogan pulling like his demon face as he sort of violently grabs both of the back shoulders of Anakin DC.
yeah. Ow, ow.
uh, it does, but it is just an interesting thought. It makes me wonder, like, is that something I'm going to try and do more of? Is just watch it on DAZN and just sort of have that kind of like complete outside input shut out. And maybe when it's a big moment, I go back and watch it on UFC Fight Pass with the commentary and kind of see if that changes my opinion.
I wish I had that time again. I remember when we started this podcast, we were on furlough, so just had time to
Oh,
rewatch the fights constantly.
oh man, and I was doing such a good job with the editing. I had all these animations and all these things would pop up when we did the pick show. As soon as we went back to work, it was just like, yeah, that's not happening. It's
It's
just
just
not happening.
not enough time.
It's just not enough hours in the day. Oh well. Okay, we got some news to, well, kind of news to talk about. Obviously, John Jones is now the heavyweight champion of the world. This gives him a little bit of license to, swing his dick around a little, talk some shit, say he's the man. Obviously, though, Francis Ngannou can also kind of say he's the man. And he's got his big deal. And him and John Jones have been going back and forth on Twitter a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't feel like John really covered himself in glory here. I feel like Francis Ngannou absolutely destroyed him in this social media round. This is a 10-8 for me.
Yeah, there's been John Jones is getting in a bit of beef as well, though. Like, did you hear about the whole thing with him and Tyson Fury?
Yeah, so like Joe Rogan says that if they were like in a room together, like Tyson Fury's not leaving that room. But it's kind of stupid because he's kind of basing that on the way they both perform in sports with rules with officials. When I understand that John Jones is like a bad man in terms of like beating his wife and stuff, but Tyson Fury's like been doing like hand to hand combat since he was a small fucking child with people that generally aren't known for abiding by rules. I just don't think that John Jones would go more than 10 seconds with both his eyes still in his head. I just feel like Tyson Fury is always going to win that
That's
fight.
that's the side that I don't feel gets taken into account. It's not like we're talking about, like, I feel like if you're doing like the Floyd Mayweather versus Khabib argument, I feel that applies a lot more. Like Floyd Mayweather and Khabib both go into a cell and decide they're having a fight. Only one person's walking out, and we all know that's Khabib. Like Tyson Fury's 6'9". You know what I mean? Like he's not a small guy, and he's not like some, oh, I just learned how to box really technically, like Andre Ward. It's like, no, dude, like he's from a family of Gypsy King bare knuckle brawlers. I think he understands street fighting better than people are giving him credit for here.
Yup. Anyway, so
You
off
know,
the back of that, there's some, back and forth, and I think Tyson Fury kind of closed it with saying, like, I'm a boxer, mate. Like, if you want to fight me, like, fight me in the ring. Obviously, I'm not going to win in an MMA fight.
yeah, he backed out a little bit after talking a lot of shit.
Well,
That's one thing I'll say.
I saw it as talking about how he could fight him and beat him in real life, and then John trying to bring it back to, well, I can whip you in MMA. It's like, well, yeah, of course you can. That's what you do. I'm a boxer. If you come in the boxing ring, I'm going to whip you. But that's not what Joe Rogan started this whole thing off with. And John Jones just needs to mind his P's and Q's. He's just such an idiot.
There is one factor that we don't take into account as well, which is that I get that wrestling is really effective. But if you are able, like you would be in a street fight, to just knee your opponent in the face when he's on the ground, the consequence of missing a takedown becomes a lot more fucking dire.
Absolutely.
It's only because there's this one specific rule in MMA that guys can basically fail a takedown and be in what is effectively a fairly safe position, all things considered. Obviously, you can still be punched in the head, but people take a risk having to kind of come down to your levels to punch you in the head at that point. But that doesn't apply to a street fight. You know what I mean? Like if John
No.
Jones misses that takedown, he's eating a pretty hard knee to the face.
Also, I've seen a few times in MMA where, having a dominant position or even having someone's back is completely nullified by eye gouging. And a real
This is also
fight,
very true.
you're going to get some eye gouging.
This is true. This is very true. You're going to get some biting. You're going to get some hair pulling.
You're going to get some nut shots.
You're going to get some nut shots. I mean, that would be my go-to. My go-to would be the double finger, two fingers open eye jab, followed by the nut shot, and then if you can, just like the thumb in the singular eye as you kind of like twist them off and then use them to push them away. And then hopefully there's just one person. If there is more than one person, that's when you just have to run.
Absolutely.
Well, look that out of the way. Back to the Dana White thing. So John and Francis have this little engagement. Dana White gives the post-fight press conference after the fight night and kind of lays into the deal with Francis a little bit. And I've got to be honest, it sounds like sour grapes. Like
Yes.
if you think it's a good deal, if you don't think it's a good deal, who cares? Just if you think that you don't need him and he signed a crap deal, just smirk and mutter something to yourself and say, hey, listen, that's how it works. Sometimes guys want to get a better deal outside. He wanted to fight more money, get more money for fighting easier guys, all play to him. Which is what he said when Rory McDonald signed for Bellator.
Yeah, this bears a bit more significance, though. Um, when McDonald went to Bellator, we didn't know that he probably had 2, 3 fights left in him. But Dana White felt like he had 0 fights left in him. And Bellator wasn't a threat. PFL are creeping. There's rumours. I don't know how much there is to it. But hypothetically, if PFL were to buy Bellator and keep eating up that market share, between them and ONE FC, the UFC cannot continue to churn out the same quality product it has been. So he's in a position now where he either has to hedge his bets or he has to kind of start upping name value and fighter pay, because there's a very serious danger that PFL are going to become a major player and a serious risk in his market, because the huge advantage he has over ONE FC is that because of the time difference, a lot of the European and US and African viewers won't get with it in the same way, and they're still willing, because it's still they have fucked up with the way UFC is being distributed now, but it is still a lot easier for us to watch than it is ONE FC.
This is true. I also think that ONE FC is branding as well to a certain extent. ONE FC, people will recognize a couple of people, but they're not going to know a lot of the names. I think I like the fact that ONE FC do the Muay Thai matches and the kickboxing as well, but that will also be one of those things where there's a lot of people that are just MMA fans
Yeah, well,
and
that
they
that never
won't
really panned out for
embrace.
like Bellator. You know, they phased all of that out. It wasn't great for MMA markets. That's the thing. Like in Asia, ONE FC does they have problems, and it is a pretty shady organization. But you know, they do still have like big name fighters both in like Muay Thai and MMA that like are more well known in Asia. It's just that like Dana White and for as it is right now, rightly so, doesn't view them as a threat to his main market in the same way. PFL are going to eat directly into his viewership.
Yeah, listen. I
Not
don't
not
think
not
they
now,
pose the
but
same.
eventually, because if they so if you look at like if they buy Bellator this year, I imagine they'll probably continue it as its own thing for a little bit, but there'll be the option there for cross promotion fights with their super fight division. There'll be the option for Bellator fighters to come in as alternates or to even just declare for PFL seasons. They can keep the season format. They can, do the more traditional format. They can go in a lot of different directions. And I imagine they'll fuck around with all of it quite slowly, but kind of do it that way. They're gonna have some big fucking names and some big fights they can make. And it's not going to be the
It's
same quality of fight as some of the lesser known but very very good UFC fighters, but it's probably going to bring in more casuals.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know how concerned Dana would be though, just on the basis that I don't. I think there's a lot of points in his kind of run as the president where he would have felt bigger threats. Like I think, when you think when there was things like Strike Force and the WEC before that, obviously when he had Pride, and a lot of people felt like Pride had the best fighters and not the UFC. Like there's a lot of points he's had to deal with major competition. And I think one of the things with Dana is he's seen a lot of that competition kind of rise and not be able to sustain longevity. So the thing with PFL, it's not that I think that they couldn't be a player, but it's the same issue with Bellator, where it's like you're dealing with a very well branded entity that knows it's a well branded entity, and it's can you survive long enough and have that consistent growth where you can kind of start tapping in and breaking into that market. Obviously, I think for fighters, it would be a really good thing because the more competition, the more there is, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to secure the best salary and the best pay. Obviously, as a viewer, though, and this is kind of like a general issue, is because MMA isn't the largest talent pool comparative to other sports that we see, where you have millions of kids from every single country kind of playing it. The more high level sort of there is only so much talent to go around at the elite level, and a dilution of that can dilute the entire sport in general. So it's a weird one. Like I think competition is good, but it also comes with the consequences as well.
Yeah, man. But the other thing is like all these other things, challenges he's come through. Some of them he came through by the skin of his teeth, and he had a lot more autonomy then. Doesn't really have that now.
Yeah,
Not in the
no,
same
but
way.
it's better. But the brand is bigger than it used to be.
Yeah, but the brand may have peaked, in my opinion, if they don't find better ways to do business. Like I love Contender Series, like some of the products they've brought in. But that whole kind of like let's keep churning over fighters, let's keep putting on a shit ton of events with loads of debutantes every time. Um, and just
No, I think. Do you know what I think it is? I think there was a Conor McGregor peak on a certain level in terms of they don't have any singular person that can bring in what Conor McGregor could bring in. However, I do think the sport overall, separate from Conor McGregor, is far larger. What I do think though is I think a lot of the people that kind of have been fans of MMA for a long time and kind of felt like they were fans of MMA when it was still much more of an underground scene, I think they don't feel like they're enjoying the sport as much. But what you're getting is much more of a mainstream audience watching it. But a mainstream audience that, by their very nature, are going to be far more fickle.
Yeah, I mean, we even see it on the views. The views for fight night cards versus pay per view cards is ridiculous. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, like, there are some pay per views where we're like, this is not the best card. This is not how it used to be. I worry
This,
that people will get turned off if they continue to, like when we were going through COVID, we were willing to make a lot more concessions because it was just fascinating. It was amazing. It was commendable that they were managed to keep the sport going. But we're out the other side now. Like, please, let's have a bit more stability with fighters getting signed, fighters getting cut. Let's just see a bit of an improvement in fighter pay where it's deserved, and let's just start fucking pushing fighters that deserve it. Because there's a lot of
do you
kind
think?
of untapped resources on the UFC roster, to be honest, where it's like, give them some better fights, give them a bit of a push. We've got some exciting people here.
Do you think that maybe the models should change? So the UFC should do like a bit of a drastic cut of talent and have it so that maybe you only have, let's say, 25 fighters max in each weight class, and then all of your developing fighters are on a minor league kind of thing that you can still have on UFC Fight Pass, and all of the events that you would have had be in the Apex, you just fill with these kind of like minor league events, and you let guys build up experience and do their work there, and you have fewer UFC events, but you keep it as far more like these are the big guys. Like this is a UFC event now. Like this is our top guys all looking to try and move up and be the champion.
Not even that. I mean, I'm all for having 50 or 100 or whatever in each weight class, but make some effort to make your top 5, your top 10 be the best top 5, top 10 in the world. Which
Yeah.
the, there's too
Well,
many
I think this
talented
is,
fighters that kind of basically go unpursued to some extent.
yeah, I think, well, I don't know. I don't know if they look at the excitement level and base it on that in the same way that maybe they used to. I think it is more merited, but certainly, like you look at, I mean, actually, this is a good topic to touch on. But obviously, Dana White, kind of very shortly after we released last week's episode, mentions released the main cards for UFC 291 and UFC 292. One of those fights is going to be Paulo Costa versus Ikram Aliskerov. Paulo Costa is ranked number 5 in the world. Aliskerov just made his UFC debut. Now, you can't tell me that that fight for Aliskerov is a meritocracy. That
No,
is a
but
guy that they clearly won
you don't.
very quickly up the rankings.
You know what Costa said though?
What?
He hasn't agreed to this fight.
Of course, because that's what he is.
Yeah.
He says that every time. I'll tell you who else says they haven't agreed to their fight. Sterling says he's still injured. Hasn't confirmed, hasn't signed the contract either.
Is what it is then. Didn't O'Malley give him a little longer?
I have no idea, but there's a
I can't
rumor that
remember.
that might not happen
I saw a bit of
on
a back and
August.
forth about the dates, and then O'Malley was like, "No, I'm not ready for that. Like, let's do August."
Okay, I know they were talking about July. I know
Yeah.
Sterling wanted September. Maybe August is the compromise, but obviously 291. It's going to be headlined by Poirier versus Gaethje 2 for the BMF belt. How do you feel about the fight? How do you feel about the BMF belt?
I love the fight. First fight was great. Very excited to watch the second fight. I'm absolutely blocking out the whole BMF belt thing. Um,
Yeah,
didn't hate it when they did it, but
didn't need to be brought back.
yeah, this is really stupid, and I just don't need to see this pointless belt thing. I I used to get frustrated at how many interim titles they did. Now I've become numb to it, and they still find ways to get under my skin.
It feels a bit unnecessary because regardless of whether or not Dariush beats Charles Oliveira, where in which case he will probably fight Islam next for the belt, you kind of assume that whoever wins between Poirier and Gaethje gets the shot after Dariush. So there's plenty on the line. You don't need a BMF belt to sell this.
Yeah, do you think either of them care about the BMF angle?
I think they think it's fun. I don't think they think of it as a belt, but it's one of those things that you get to hang it in the trophy cabinet if you get it. You know what I mean? Every interview people will do, you get to be referred to as the BMF. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they'd view it as being a champ, but,
No,
and
I
I
think
don't think
well,
either of them would have campaigned for it. But I think
neither
it's that
neither of
thing
them
that
view
if you
the
get it,
interim belt as being a champ. You know, they're both on that level. I mean, Gaethje fucking threw his belt away. There's
so
no
Poirier's given an interview with Hariel Hawani, who asked him about this. And he said for him, the difference is that the interim belt felt like it was a fraction of the real belt. Like it was kind of like an imitation or like a piece of what the true thing that he really wanted. Where at no point in his career has he aspired to be the BMF champion. So it's not something that like matters to him. But in the same way, it's a bit of fun. Like, you know what I mean? He doesn't mind it. He's not like
yeah.
against it to a certain extent. Whereas I think for him, what he didn't like about the interim champ is that it's kind of like the statement of you're the champ, but you're not really the champ.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
I don't think
whereas
either of
the
them are
BMF
offended
belt,
by it, but I don't think either of them cares really.
listen, I mean, if you wanted to crown a BMF, they're pretty. It's pretty hard to find two more deserving guys. I mean, they've literally fought fucking everybody in the hardest weight class. They've had some of the most bloody back and forth wars in MMA history of the last 10
I'm
years.
not going to be sucked into a conversation about whether or not the BMF is appropriate.
I'm not saying
I
it's appropriate, but I'm
I
just
am
saying that
completely blanking out this angle when it gets to the fight time.
I understand that. Other fun fights on that card. Alex Pereira is coming back far too soon to fight Jan Blakovic. I'm going to put this out there. I think he's coming back too early, man.
Yeah, well, apparently this is an eliminator as well, so I
Well,
think
that's how they got him to take the fight.
yeah,
I kind of like Jan in that. I'm not going to lie. Coming off that savage knockout, maybe the chin's not going to be there. Jan's good at dealing with the leg kicks.
he'll mix it up. He doesn't necessarily have to
Mix
use
it
that
up.
Polish power on the feet.
Good chin. Can take shots. Hard to finish, certainly on the feet. Yeah, I kind of I think that fight's lining up quite nicely for Jan, to be honest.
I can't say that at this point. I really just need to see how big Pereira is at light heavyweight, or Pereira is at light
This
heavyweight.
is
Just I
speak
don't
the true
know.
truth.
I don't know yet. I'm gonna have a hard time
Speak
picking
the
that
true
fight.
truth. It's a good fight though. It's a good fight. A couple of fun pay-per-views that they announced mysteriously on exactly the same day that Ngannou's contract got announced.
See, the PFL are creeping. Dana White's worried.
Apparently so. Apparently so. Right. There's no MMA this weekend, Josh. What are you going to do with your life instead?
Because we're all broke ass, like waiting for payday, check to check kind of people. Trying to organise something that's going to cost €0 to €10, but I mean it's not that it's difficult to do. It's just it's difficult to get like 4 or 5 people to do that willingly because everyone's got a different idea of what we should be doing for free. And I don't want to go
Yeah.
to a fucking museum or go for a hike if I'm feeling tired and shitty, which I've been feeling all week. So I probably just want to do like a movie day or something, but I don't know yet. What are your plans?
I have no idea, man. Probably boxing on Saturday morning on the weekend. Certainly watching the last Premier League day on Sunday. That's probably going to be my Sunday.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Guardians 3. I haven't seen Guardians 3. And it's been a pretty barren run of Marvel movies that have greatly disappointed me. But I've heard that Guardians is actually pretty good.
Hey, we
So
did have
I'd actually like to see at the cinema.
we had Dungeons and Dragons though. That was good.
It's not a Marvel movie, but I really
No,
enjoyed
no, no.
Dungeons
But
and
yeah,
Dragons.
yeah. Wait, was that last month we went to go see that?
Yeah, that was a good cinema month for me because I saw that and I saw John Wick 4, which was fucking sensational.
Oh, I've downloaded it. I haven't watched it yet. In fact, to be honest, I
Oh,
downloaded
it's
Dungeons and Dragons came out digitally like a week after we saw it at the cinema because we saw it late. So I've watched that like 3 times already.
it's a very good movie. It's actually a really really enjoyable film.
What's it's
I'll
a
tell you what's.
Go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just
No,
saying
you
it's
go.
easy to watch at like 3 in the morning when you can't sleep, kind of thing. Just like, yeah, I'll have fun with that. Been watching a lot of those. Rewatch Beer Fest. Fuck, go
Broken
through it on my
Lizard really
download.
lets you down.
Yeah, I haven't rewatched it yet, but I've got Slam and Salmon waiting for me as well. Didn't bother
Nice.
with Club Dread this time. I
Is
watched
Club
the
Dread the
new
one
one.
where it's the vacation
Yeah,
island?
yeah.
That's a good one. That's a lot of fun.
And their new one, Quasi.
Quasi, haven't seen Quasi. If you want to hate watch something or just watch something that's really bad, but you can kind of appreciate it for its stupidity, particularly if you know the real story, Queen Cleopatra on Netflix is has to be seen to be believed.
Yeah, I've heard that's terrible. I'll tell you what else is really
It's
bad
quite
that I watched yesterday. To Catch a
go on.
Killer, the new Ben Mendelsohn one.
I haven't heard of that, but I like Ben Mendelsohn, so that's disappointing.
I love Ben Mendelsohn. Ben Mendelsohn is good in it. It's just that it's a bad film.
Hey, it happens sometimes.
Yeah, and English actors in it as well. Can't remember his name now.
But just to clarify, Queen Cleopatra, one of the so-called quote unquote experts they speak to literally says at one point in the documentary that when she was a little girl, she had a dream, and in her dream, Cleopatra's spirit came and spoke to her and told her that she needs to tell her real story and that I'm actually black, and you need to tell the whole world that I'm black.
I didn't realize being a historian was that easy. I
Apparently so.
I thought you
Apparently
had to go
so.
to school and shit.
Well, one of them teaches at Hamilton College, so that's just terrifying in its own right.
Is it that one?
Yeah, that's the one. She says that she refers, first of all, she said she spent her entire career refusing to learn about Cleopatra because she didn't want to learn about another white woman. Then she said that her grandmother told her, "Don't ever believe what they tell you in school. Cleopatra was black." And then she says that she had a dream where Cleopatra's ghost spoke to her and told her that she needs to tell her black story, which is really weird because they have like there's literally portraits like Cleopatra's on coins, very clearly depicted as a white Greek woman.
Yeah, I I haven't seen it. To be
It's
honest, I haven't had Netflix for a couple months now. Or when did I get rid of Netflix? Maybe I haven't had Netflix for a month. I think the last thing I saw on that was John Mulaney's new stand up.
yeah, say no more. It's gone down the pan to be honest. There's too many streaming sites, man. Everything's just been diluted by being split across all these different platforms.
Well, I also found that I was just dealing with like too many different things. I was quite stressed out, strung out. I wasn't watching what I wanted to watch anymore. I was just watching shit that was available, and then just forcing myself to watch like multiple episodes of something that I wasn't really into. And now that I've just started seeking out specifically like things I want to rewatch or I haven't seen before, probably kind of enjoying my free time a little bit more.
There you go. There you go. Probably a valuable lesson for the audience in there, if they're still listening. On that note, I think we can call that a show.
Yeah, and if you want 20 minutes of me defending season 5 of The Wire, um, I'll you leave one fucking comment. I'll upload it as a separate episode.
Sounds like a deal to me. Guys, if you did listen this long, thanks for keeping with us. We will be back at some point next week, probably to talk about The Wire instead of mixed martial arts. But tune in for that.
Possibly with a trialist as well.
Very possibly so, with a
Mm-hmm.
new Miguel. So watch this space. Till then, have a great week, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Bye, Dave. Bye, Laurie. Bye, Trifo.
Bye, Laurie. Bye, Dave.